welcome back to Pictorial on Relay FM. I'm Quinn Rose, and not only did I not go to art school, I have never known less about a topic than what we're talking about today.
Hi, and I'm Betty. I'm also someone who did not go to art school, but that really doesn't matter for this podcast. And the fact that I have worked at an art gallery for over 9 years kind of matters, but kind of doesn't really matter either. I know a little bit more about this than Quinn's, so that we're not just two people staring at each other saying nothing for the whole podcast, but we'll see how it goes.
As I said, I basically know nothing about what we're talking about today, which is NFTs. This is something that Betty brought to me that apparently has been a conversation of interest in places around the internet that I don't see, apparently, because I'm too busy just talking about musicals all the time. I truly know nothing about cryptocurrency, which I gather has something to do with this, but I'm really excited to find out what this is and what it has to do with art. And usually both of us obviously research the topic ahead of time and come to each other and have a conversation about what we've learned and our thoughts on it. But because this topic is very new and ever changing and opaque, we specifically decided that I would not read anything about it ahead of time, so I can just be here to learn what's going on.
Well, I think it's one of those things where, we both have interests that are not just art, obviously. And maybe one day you bring a musical related topic and I'll just be like, okay. And then if we can do the reverse situation of this. But cryptocurrencies and blockchain, not so much cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology is really something that I have been interested in for years. And it's what eventually led me into learning about NFTs, which stands for non-fungible tokens.
I gather that we're going to go pretty in-depth into this, but can you summarize what non-fungible tokens are in a paragraph? What is it, Betty? Please tell me. I don't know. For sure.
The thing is, I want to, but I want to start off with something it's almost like a YouTube video. I want to start off with a quickly telling you about what seems like an insane art story.
Okay.
It will make sense soon, because I think if I just say an NFT is blah, it will still not make, in a paragraph, it still won't make any sense. So it kind of has to happen in this way.
Okay. I'm willing to come along for the ride. Tell me the story.
Okay, perfect. So basically what happened is 2 days ago from the day that we're recording this podcast, on March 4th, I guess they call themselves either a collective or crypto-based artists, bought a real authentic Banksy piece called Morons. It's a really famous piece of, it's a picture that Banksy drew of a bunch of people at an art auction. Basically, it's a bunch of people bidding on something, and there's an auction person. It could be something like at Christie's auction house or something like that. And there's a painting that says, "I can't believe you morons actually buy this." So, and obviously the name of it's a print, actually, it's called Morons. So it's making fun of art auctions. Anyway, this collective bought this piece for, I think, $100,000 US. And every Banksy piece actually comes with a certificate of authenticity. So a legit Banksy piece, because people have tried to rip off Banksy a lot. And so we know it's legit because it has a certificate. So what they did is then they set it on fire live on Twitter. They burnt it. They destroyed it. And while they were destroying it, the person in the video who was one of the representative of this collective basically said that what's going to happen is we are going to sell this piece online as an NFT, a non-fungible token, which I'll explain later. But they're burning the original. So it was burnt in Brooklyn, New York, on Wednesday. So sorry, it was the 3rd. And they're the physical piece will be gone. It still exists in a digitized format, and we're going to sell the digital version. So people are already what? Okay. So it gets better. So Banksy wasn't involved. So he probably knows about this now. But he wasn't he didn't participate in this. So yeah, it was live streamed. And then afterwards they put it on this marketplace called OpenSea. And then it went up for auction. I will get into NFTs in a second, but before I get there is people who are like horrified of people burning art. Obviously, this is like a work of performance art, in my opinion. We've talked about Ai Weiwei before, Ai Weiwei destroying a Han Dynasty urn, and then people coming into an Ai Weiwei exhibition to destroy the Ai Weiwei. This is similar to that, but not exactly. And then Banksy, we have also talked about who famously destroyed his own art. Like at an auction, after the auction happened, he shredded his own art. So there is precedent already for this type of thing happening. And the collective actually in a news release or a press release actually said, quote, I think Banksy would appreciate what we are doing since he also promotes creativity and iconoclastic ideas, end quote.
Okay.
So before I go in, do you have any initial reactions?
Okay. I still don't really know what's happening, but I gather here that they have converted this to a digital form. They are selling the digital form, and they have destroyed the original. I'm not exactly sure why yet, but we're going to get there. My initial reaction is horror, partially because I think I don't understand this. However, I do think that because it's a Banksy, that does make it different. Like, I do think that because of like all the reasons you just listed, like the precedent for this and sort of modern art, performance art, Banksy specifically, I think it's way different to burn a Banksy piece than it would be to burn like a Van Gogh, you know? So I'm very curious, what the process of this actually is. But I initially am very taken aback, but I'm willing to continue the story.
I do think they are going for shock value. And if you watch the video, I'm probably misquoting this guy because I didn't write down exactly what he said in the video. He actually does say, so this is going to come up later. Like, one thing that is important to this collective or to this group is, one, they're concerned that Banksy gets copied and copied and copied all over again. So they are concerned with authenticity. They're also concerned with pieces being altered after the fact, or the physical piece or the physical media getting altered. So they're saying by digitizing it now, this work exists in its form as it is today. So even if people later on like alter it or destroy it, or the artist himself comes in and makes changes to it, you can't, because we're burning it. We're getting rid of it. So we are making like a timestamp copy of it today, and in its original form of the artist originally painting it, and that is important to us. So that is one thing he does say in the video that usually doesn't translate into news articles, who just go, oh my God, these crazy people are burning real authentic art that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wait, but you can also digitally alter things, though.
You can, and I'm gonna go there.
Okay.
I know. This is where people are like, wait, what? Like, totally. So in order to explain NFTs, I have to briefly explain what blockchain is. But before I even explain anything, I don't want people to just turn off the podcast because they know we're talking about cryptocurrencies. Because I've followed crypto people and Bitcoin people and mostly blockchain people for years, I understand that a lot of them can be quite intense, and a lot of them can be quite controversial. And I have to just start right now, set the tone and set the stage that I, Betty, am not advocating for blockchain or cryptocurrencies or NFTs in one way or another. I definitely don't personally own any NFTs, and I probably won't, if ever, or maybe for a very long time, or until I even do more reading about it. So I'll say that. And I will say that because people feel very strongly about cryptocurrencies in one way or another, I expect feedback either from people who really love cryptocurrencies and NFTs to be like, well, you didn't address this properly and you weren't enthusiastic enough about it, and people who really don't like it have a big problem with it. And I think I personally welcome the feedback. I think, like, as long as you're not like attacking any of us personally, I have no problem with that. But I will just say that this is a controversial topic.
I continue to not know anything about it. Here's what I'll say. I have very limited knowledge of any kind of cryptocurrency topics. The things that I know about them, and I can list them off very easily, are it's some kind of converting money, which is already fake, to a somewhat faker form of money. But then it's kind of like a stock. It can go up and down, and it something computers. But also that you have to mine it, and it's bad for the environment. That's what I've heard about it.
All of those things are, I would say, true and also not true, but okay, like or not exactly, but you are not wrong about any of those things, at least from the way you described it, except for the fake part I'll address in a second, because again, like fakeness and authenticity, and this is why Banksy like matters in this specific discussion. So, okay, I'm going to try to explain blockchain in like the most simple way possible. And if you are either confused or get it, then let me know either way. Blockchain is this type of technology that was actually invented in 1991. There are these two researchers called Stuart Haber and W. Scott Stornetta, and they basically wanted to implement a system that documents timestamps that can't be tampered with. So it basically is to do something digitally somewhere that cannot be like undone or tampered with or changed in any way. It goes back to what you mentioned before, like digital things are malleable. You can Photoshop them something, you can delete it, you can permanently erase it, you can do all kinds of things to it. You can copy it 1,000,000 times and it basically you can do whatever. But they wanted to not have that situation. They wanted to do something where you could have a permanent like watermark timestamp. And they did come up with this technology, or at least a theory of working blockchain technology to make that happen. But it didn't have really a real world application until around 2009. And so what blockchain is in its simplest form is that it's a type of database. So there's all kinds of databases. Like if you create a Google Docs that we have right here on the show notes, that's a database. A spreadsheet is a database. But a blockchain, it's a database of things stored in blocks that are chained together. Like it's most commonly used as like a ledger for transactions. And the reason that matters is that it creates this situation called being immutable, which basically means that when a data is entered, it's irreversible. The way that it's chained together, something always comes in at the end of the block, and you can't alter it after the fact. And again, if we go into exactly how it is, this entire podcast will be about how blockchain works. In the show notes, we will link to a SciShow video that basically goes through how blockchain, and it explains a little bit about how Bitcoin works as well. So if you want to find out more of exactly the technology behind blockchain, you can watch that video, which is like 10 minutes long, and they do a really good job of explaining how it works.
Okay, but I can follow this. Blockchain is a database that once you put data into it, it can't be altered.
And you can see immediately how that could be important, or not immediately. Actually, it was like almost 17 years later that somebody went, hey, I can use this to maybe apply to like transactions and ledgers and other things. And so in 2009, somebody quite anonymous, and we still to this day don't know exactly who it is, basically invented Bitcoin. So when I'm reading news articles, people are always saying blockchain was invented in 2009, and it's like, it actually wasn't. Bitcoin was, and it sort of adapted from previous technologies or previous research. But they used this blockchain concept to apply to, I guess, like a monetary ledger thing. I'm like, people who are so into crypto, are the way I explain it, they're probably going to shoot me. But like, I'm trying to make it in a way that people like me honestly understand. So I'll briefly explain then what Bitcoin is. But essentially what Bitcoin is that it's honestly a giant ledger. That's what it is. It's a giant like transaction of every single Bitcoin transaction that has ever taken place in the history of Bitcoin, which initially obviously was just a bunch of developers like coming up with this idea and doing like ledgers and testing transactions of their own with like, whatever. Again, it's quote unquote made up, but since a lot of people have started using it, it's now this ledger that records every single transaction ever. And again, it can't be reversed. It can't be changed. And I'll talk about later about exactly why then Bitcoin can't be changed. Essentially, it's a clear way to record transactions. But the other thing that was like a lot of people think was brilliant about Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. So what it basically means is that the data of Bitcoin is not saved on like somebody's computer. It's not like Betty's computer has like all the Bitcoin transactions listed in a ledger. It's hosted on, I think at this point, tens of thousands of computers all around the world. So that even if honestly half of the world's computers go down because of some sort of like power grid failure or something, there's still enough computers basically for this ledger to not be like erased or deleted. Even if every single computer in the entire world gets shut down because of some sort of like solar flare or whatever, and we lose everything, people actually regularly back up, like, I think the ledger, like in like printed format, which is probably like humongous, or like, I don't know exactly like how often this gets done, but people like I have backups, like not of the entire blockchain, obviously, but like of my own wallet to a like a physical like USB stick. So like it can be backed up so much that essentially all of humanity may have to be wiped out for a blockchain to not exist, for sort of a Bitcoin to not exist anymore.
So the thing with Bitcoin that makes it like different than regular money is that the records of it, like basically it's impossible to wipe them out. Okay.
At this point, yes. That's not the only thing that's different, but
okay. So that's one main thing. Yeah. And then when you're talking about like everybody like having this on their, having like the ledger on their computer, is that what mining Bitcoin means?
So the mining itself, it's hard for me to like explain mining, but basically the other aspect of Bitcoin is that it's scarce. There's only 21 million Bitcoins. So they artificially made it so that, because like the other problem these people are trying to solve is inflation. They made this scarce asset because they're concerned about governments printing money and just devaluing currency. So the mining aspect is like miners will artificially like mine it. Right now, not all 21 million have been mined. Like, so mining it is really just solving complex math problems. And that's like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what it is. So
why does this sound like Ready Player One?
So, oh my God, I was going to mention this movie like later on in this, if you weren't going to bring up something like a movie, but yeah, it is like gold. It's like mining for gold, except instead of mining for gold, it's mining for this digital currency. But it's just like, well, then why is it hard to mine? Like, if it's digital, why don't you just dig it up? It's like, well, because in order to mine it, like these really complex math problems have to be solved. And so you can't just easily get to it. And so you can see like it's gamifying this thing. And so lots of nerds would be super into this. And now people have built these giant servers, and we'll talk about servers and how they consume energy later.
Okay, wait. So that's where the environmental thing comes in, because you have to solve these really complex math problems. So people build these like really sort of like high energy servers that are using up resources. That's wild.
It's these computers that, so I don't think it's just the mining, like the transaction, like doing Bitcoin transactions also use up energy as well. But I think it's nowhere near the mining in my research. I don't have the exact data right now, but we can look it up, or other people can. That's essentially a way to explain mining. But the idea is like the last Bitcoin, I think, will be mined sometime in like 2140. Like, I don't have the exact number. It's like 100 something years from now. And then there will just be 21 million, and they won't be any more. Bitcoin can be lost, but that's only because people have forgotten the keys to their wallet, which we don't have time to get into. Other than that, essentially, there's just that many Bitcoin. And it's kind of like one of the reasons why people invest in gold is because like when the economy goes, tanks, and people are like, okay, I'm going to put my money into gold, is because it's a scarce resource, or for the most part anyway, until we find some asteroid that's full of gold. But even then, that's difficult to mine. So the idea of having like scarcity is important. And so since we're here, is like whenever people say like, yeah, like this is all fake, it's like, well, yes, all money is just, we collectively as a society have agreed that this is what we use to do transactions, like whether it's the US dollar or the Canadian dollar or, gold. Like historically, there have been other objects that people used to exchange goods and value. And it's just that more recently people are thinking, well, why don't we use like a digital version? And again, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin, but there are people who argue why it should be Bitcoin. But this is why countries around the world want to do their own coins. Centralized governments are thinking maybe we have a cryptocurrency. Like, it's got all these benefits. Maybe instead of the US dollar or the Canadian dollar, we have crypto USD or whatever they want to call it. So this is why people are thinking, okay, this has use case. We can use these benefits of cryptocurrency and replace our existing monetary system with it. And again, there's problems with doing that too, or the potential problems anyway. But yeah, essentially it's because of these advantages like scarcity, not being able to just like print money and cause inflation. But the reason why people are into Bitcoin itself is because of this decentralization. Like, no government technically owns Bitcoin. No single company owns Bitcoin. No single person owns Bitcoin. It's dependent on this open source, like global peer-to-peer network of people to maintain it. And lots of people are now into maintaining it and are really believe in it. And so the chances of it going away at this point is kind of impossible. So that's kind of why people, or at least a certain type of people, really like the idea that the government has no control over your money. And you don't, and it's international. You don't have to be faced with like an exchange rate when you go to, another country to exchange for like the British pound or Chinese yuan or whatever. And this is also why in countries with very unstable governments and money that basically is just totally completely useless, that they turn to cryptocurrencies because they're like, well, this not only it isn't being devalued, I can go to another country when I escape from my current terrible one and still and just take this with me because it's on my phone.
Wait, okay, we have to come back to NFTs, but I do have one more big question about Bitcoin first, because and my understanding is that it functions like a stock, though. Like, the price of Bitcoin goes up and down. Why?
That's a really good question. That is a really good question. So people think it's like a stock, it's like a security, and that's really essentially a misconception. Or some people call it a currency and some people call it I want to say a resource, or whatever gold is called. Like, or gold and silver. When people invest in gold and silver, gold goes up and down, silver goes up and down. Money also goes up and down. People do Forex, foreign exchange trading. Like, people will invest in an emerging market in like Africa or Southeast Asia or wherever, for like, if they're thinking, okay, this country is like an up and coming developing nation. Right now, this like whatever money from this country is only worth, like, you have to have like 1,000 to get $1, but we think actually in 10 years it will almost be on par, or like $10 to a US dollar. So then if I invest in this money now, I can make big bucks. And people have made big bucks by investing in emerging markets, but not just like the industry in emerging markets, but the currency of emerging markets. The idea that it's like a stock is wrong, but it's the same idea. Like, investing in a company, investing in a resource, investing in a currency could give you big returns.
And so is it because like just Bitcoin has gotten so much attention that it seems like the value of Bitcoin has been more volatile than sort of like the average country's currency?
That's correct. Exactly. So again, like the volatility of an emerging market currency is already volatile. Like, it does, like USD, Canadian, British pound, as much as it goes up and down, is not by much. But like an emerging developing country, it will go up much higher. But again, nowhere near the volatility of Bitcoin. And the reason why, like, I very much emphasize that, or many people emphasize that it's not a stock, is, well, nobody owns it. Like, that's the problem. It's not like you're investing in Bitcoin Corp. Like, there are cryptocurrencies that are owned by companies, and those are things that we don't have time to talk about. So in those cases, you could argue that it's more like a stock, but in terms of Bitcoin, like, really, because no one owns it, and at this point no one could own it, it isn't like a stock.
Okay. Am I allowed to learn what a non-fungible token is now?
Yes, you are. Like, oh my
Yes.
God. So before you learn what a non-fungible token is, you're going to learn about what Ethereum is, because a non-fungible token, I'm going to tell you right now, a non-fungible token is a unique, like, token, digitized token that is backed by the Ethereum network, which is another cryptocurrency, similar to Bitcoin, but very different.
No, there are too many things. Okay, wait, but then what's Ethereum and what does it have to do with Banksy?
So blockchain, it doesn't just have use cases in currencies. So it's actually nowadays it's being used by lots of different companies. So Walmart, Pfizer, Siemens, they actually use a lot of it to track things like supply chain, because you can have these like accurate data that's immutable, that you can't delete, and blockchain is also very secure, and it's essentially impossible to hack. And so so I work in healthcare. So a lot of healthcare records, or not a lot, some healthcare records are being now stored on blockchain, and people are using it for property records. So the thing that's important for Ethereum and for NFTs is that, so Ethereum is it's a cryptocurrency, but really, like, a lot of people say it's more like a global supercomputer. The people who use this blockchain to apply to Ethereum is that basically it's a giant, like, computer. Again, it's decentralized, it's all around the world, and it basically helps to facilitate, verify, and negotiate contract agreements. So, like, I'll give a really simple example of how smart contracts work. So basically, like, say, for example, that you and I, Quinn, we're using a smart contract. Like, you're the landlord and I'm renting an apartment from you. So we have this agreement. It's a digital version of a contract. And so a part of the agreement is you give me, like, the security door code to the apartment as soon as I pay the security deposit. And then so we would both send our portion of the deal to the smart contract, and then things would happen automatically. So there would be like an automatic exchange. Like, you don't have to send me the security code. It automatically gets sent to me as soon as my transaction clears. And then, because it will check the contract, and the contract will be saying, okay, yeah, this support, Betty gets the code, blah, 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 like, Quinn gets the money. But if for whatever reason something goes wrong, like if the code doesn't get supplied, the money gets immediately automatically returned to me, because again, the contract hasn't been fulfilled. Like, all of these things in a contract that would occur automatically because the contract is checking itself. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need, like, a third-party mediator. Like, you don't need to do all of these things that you would typically have to do when you have a contract. Is to, okay, let's go to contract. I do this every day, like with lease agreements at work. Like, what does it say? What does it have to do? Like, what's going on? And, like, did we have this aspect of additional rent in the contract? Let's go check that. But, like, you don't have to do that anymore. Really, the point is with Ethereum. Now, I'm not going to get into a lot of people's problem with it is that it's trying to automate the legal industry. It's trying to automate notaries, mediators, attorneys, and, like, I personally don't think you're going to not have lawyers in the future. You still will need it. But this makes simple things, like a simple contract, at the very least, like, like a tenant renting a place, where you don't need to pay legal fees. You don't need to deal with that. Like, you just do it. And so this is why, like, Ethereum is interesting to people, because it solves a lot of these problems, and it's time, it's money, like, that you have to pay a lawyer or you have to pay a contract negotiator, and it's like you can't get into your apartment or, like, you got into your apartment but the landlord hasn't been paid, and stuff like that.
So what does this have to do with Banksy?
Yeah, so this has to do with Banksy because when you purchase an artwork, first of all, it's essentially a contract. Okay, so the NFT the reason why the NFT is important is NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are different from fungible tokens, because a Bitcoin or an Ethereum token, they're all, like, the same token. It's all the same. Like the fungible just means non-fungible just means it's unique. So it's like US dollar or Canadian dollar. Like each dollar bill is the exact same copy of each other. A non-fungible token is a unique token. That's like there's no other token like it in the world. You can also do a limited edition run. You can say there's only like 13 Banksy tokens, or you can say there's only like 20 Betty coins, or you can say there's just one. There's just one coin that represents this artwork, whether it's digital or physical. It's a collectible, basically. But what else is a collectible? Art. So it's kind of, and it goes back to investing. Like, what is like a stock is like, yeah, you know what, like right now, say that Betty has lots of money. She doesn't, but she has a little bit of savings. Like I can invest into stocks, I can invest into gold, I can invest into like mutual funds, I can invest into like guaranteed income like government bonds, or I can invest into paintings. Like we've talked about, you know, buying paintings and selling paintings. And I actually have a YouTube videos on how to collect art, even if you don't have a lot of money. If you want to support like local artists, for instance. So you can say, okay, some people do invest in art. Like some people say like, well, I'm going to invest into this up and coming artist in the hopes that that this painting, when I sell it, you know, whatever, like 15, 20 years from now is actually going to be like 10 times the price or 100 times the price. And they're going for this like high returns, is what some people go for. But obviously it's volatile. You probably shouldn't do it if you're not like loaded or, you know, really know this market. So an NFT really is the digitized version of that. So it's like, again, it's non-fungible. So I can't go take my Banksy painting and go to Starbucks and say, hi, can I barter this Banksy painting for some coffee? Like I have to convert it back into some sort of like usable currency.
I feel like I'm almost there. I feel like I've almost got the last pieces of the puzzle coming in here. And you might be getting to this, but real quick, like logistical point. So the NFT that is the Banksy painting, what is it? Is it like a scan of the painting? Like what?
Looking into, as far as I know, it is like an NFT can really be whatever you want. Just like how, honest, because a lot of people on the internet, it's like, oh, but is this really art? I'm like, okay, look, first of all, we know like anything could be art. Obviously not everything is good art and not everything is art that people will want to buy. But like, so an NFT can also just be whatever you want. So I think this one, as far as I know, it is a scan of the painting, so it's a digitized version of the painting, and I'm assuming super high HD quality like they have in Google Arts Project. Or this one is, a scan of the print, but it can also be a scan of the painting. That's essentially what it is. It's a digitized version, but it isn't just that. I looked it up because quite often the NFT also comes with other things, because again, it's a contractual obligation. So it will quite often come with like an artist's own authenticated, like this is like it's a digital signature. Like I sign contracts at work now with Adobe Sign, and it's a digital signature instead of a physical signature. Because again, physical signatures can be forged, but digital signatures are time stamped and it's traceable. So these days, if I sign a contract at work and then later we have to go back, be like, did Betty really sign it? And if she did, you can see it was signed by Adobe Sign on this computer on this day. This computer is registered to Betty at her work, and it's got all this metadata that basically essentially proves that it was me who signed it. And it's very little way of me getting out of it to say, oh, well, somebody impersonated me and went on my computer and went on my password, even though I have two-step authentication, like all this stuff. So an artist will give a digital signature or certificate to say, yes, this is an authenticated original work by me, Banksy, or by me, the creator of Nyan Cat, like the first GIF or whatever. So, and then, so that comes with it. So that certificate of authenticity will come with it. But it also will have stuff like, quite often, like copyright usage, like what the person who bought it, like what they're allowed to use it for. Are they allowed to post it on their website? Are they allowed to reproduce it? Are they allowed to alter it? Are they allowed to do like all kinds of these other things? It could come like it could be a basic contract that has like very little, or it could be like huge and that has like a lot of stipulation and criterias of what you can and cannot do with it. And I don't like personally know like how this would work if the person violated this contract. I'm assuming if they did, it would be an automatic thing in the Ethereum network that they lose the work or it goes back to the artist. Again, it depends on what the contract says. Essentially, it has those things. And before you may have more questions, but I will just say that in terms of like the biggest question people ask is about this type of thing about digital art is, yeah, like you can copy like this scan now of the Banksy painting as many times as you want, and you can like again there are people who sell digital art, like things that aren't even ever physical in the first place. Like somebody could do a digital painting and sell it. It's like this is like the idea of limited edition runs of copies have existed basically since like Gutenberg printing press, since when you can make copies of like etchings and lithographs. Artists have been interested in like original proofs, like whether it's photography is that too, like the original negative or the original like 12 like developed photographs, or even the like original, I don't know, VHS tape of or a film reel of the original movie, and yeah, like all kinds of other things when it comes to art that can be copied, because we have been living in a world with digitization now for a long time. But artists are always interested in this like limited edition. I'm sorry, not so much artists, maybe collectors, and artists want to make money, like at least some artists do, and they will utilize this mechanism.
At this point, I understand at least the very bare bones basics of how this system works. And I'm not even questioning like what this specific incident was, because like, this was a publicity stunt.
Oh, for sure.
In many, many ways, that's what it is. And the idea of like owning something that's attached to like a specific moment in history is like always going to raise its value, which is like, of course, kind of why this happened and all that. So I have no further questions about why this sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like no questions at all. This is very similar, I think, to when we talked in a way early episode, maybe our first episode about artificial intelligence making
possibly.
art, and how like the first painting sold at auction that was made by artificial intelligence sold for like a lot of money, which seems surprising because it didn't look that good, but it was like because it's a piece of history. So I very much see the connection here. I guess that I'm still very hung up on the idea of this becoming a thing, like an intriguing thing for anyone who's not like a hardcore collector who's really interested in sort of the historical aspect of it, or is like really, really interested in sort of like blockchain and is fascinated by that. Because, ultimately, lots of things are like very easy to transition into completely digital, and it like basically makes no difference to the thing. Art is not one of those things. There is digital art, which we literally just talked about. Like there's tons of digital art. There's tons of stuff that is made natively on digital platforms. That's like the whole point, and that's awesome. But the idea but like physical art as a thing is something that I don't think can be replaced by digital means and replaced by NFT versions. So I'm curious, like, what is the argument behind this, and like where do you see this going?
Oh, for sure. This is probably like, for me, was why I came to you with this topic in the first place, because honestly, I never wanted to talk about this, but now I have to. Like before, yeah. But so before I proceed is, so one reason that this is beyond just digital art is that a lot of art that is physical art is less physical than you think, or but a lot of people may not be aware. But like, there's an example, the artist Sol LeWitt, which I think I might have mentioned a few times in the podcast, is his art is almost all instructions on how to create the art. Like whenever museums and galleries display Sol LeWitt's art, it's almost never like an actual piece that he made that it's now shipped to, like, he's long dead. And so it's an instruction on how to draw this on a wall, or like it's an idea. And he's not the only artist that does it. Like we've had exhibits at the AGO where the art is a piece of paper with an instruction on how to pour sand in the circular format and what the dimensions of the work is. And here's the materials you can buy at a hardware store, because it's, it's like a found object type of situation. And there is a really good video, another good video by the art assignment about that banana that's duct taped to a wall that somebody ate. That one, when people bought it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, or I think it was like 25,000, people just bought the certificate of authenticity and a piece of paper with an instruction saying, you go buy a banana, you go buy some duct tape, and you duct tape it to a wall. People bought the idea. Now, people are going to think this is ridiculous. We can't get into it. Watch the art assignment video on why this was important. But so that's one way that physical art, quote unquote, that's in the traditional art market can be NFT'd. But that part I'm not super interested in, because I'm sure some people are still like, oh, okay, what a bunch of it's catering to the art snobs, which in a way it is. The thing that the crypto people are interested in, but that the art market people would possibly be interested in, is that this could eliminate the gallery system or the whole auction system. So Christie's auction house has actually also auctioned an NFT as well, but this decentralizes. Like, you don't have to go, like, artists have complained for years and years that in order to be successful, you've got to get into a gallery, you got to get them to represent you, and then you got to get your work into like auction houses and whatever. But because of these systems that are established, and you need these negotiators and mediators and whatever, this is a alternative to that. And again, whether it will take off or not, it depends on how many people actually participate and use it. But already a lot of people are in the traditional way, because they're like, I don't want to pay the fees. Like, I don't want like 40 to 50% of my commissions to go to, like a dealer. And the thing that's the most important that a lot of artists, as well as crypto people, like, is that with NFTs, every single time an NFT is resold, so this Banksy, like every time, or at least I don't know if this one exactly will, how much of the proceeds will go to Banksy. I think the idea is that they're going to donate most of, so it did sell today, March 7th, for $380,000 US dollars. And they are saying they're donating, I think, all of it to charity. So I don't know if any of this will actually go to Banksy, but a lot of the ones that are being sold by the artists themselves, every single time a NFT is resold, the artist will always get a portion. And again, it depends on what the contract negotiation says, how much of the royalties or the portions they get. So it's a way to continuously support the artist. So that's another reason a lot of people like it, whether it's for digital or physical art. And the thing that interests me, and possibly you, but we'll see, is the like archival nature of it. So a while ago, like I may have mentioned, or at least to you, is at the AGO, we've been doing a lot of like actual digitization of our photography and prints and drawings and basically works on paper section of our collection. And we have a lot of rare books and a lot of things that are deteriorating that do take a lot of work, time, energy to maintain. And we know for a fact that a lot of the works on paper like will be lost to time. Like in hundreds of years, no matter how good we are at conservation, like it's not going to last. And that we basically need to digitize and have been digitizing. But the thing is, again, digital copies are also not gonna last, like, either, because again, server issues, legacy media, like how do we know in hundreds of years that this will have computers that can read this type of drive. And like in the art and libraries and archives, we're playing the long game. It's not just about whether we can go experience art today. It's about, can people experience it hundreds of years from now? And how do we people today at least attempt to make sure that people can see the art or have a copy of some sort, at least in the future, that is as authentic as possible and as close to the original as possible?
I just want to say I'm hugely in favor of digitization of art, of preserving, of archival work. Like, huge fan, love it, support it. I'm just not so sure about the whole like burning the original.
I know.
This then becomes sort of a playground for the rich to buy and sell scans of paintings situation.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, so again, at the end of the day, I think the only time that it's okay to burn an art that you just bought is a Banksy. But the other time, please don't burn and destroy the actual physical piece. We still got to preserve that for as long as physically possible. But a really important thing I do want to say is also about the original thing. So actually, a friend of mine, his name is Byron Lewis, and he made a really good YouTube video. He's not the only person who talked about this, about like George Lucas, like never wanting people to have the original version of Star Wars, and like basically refusing. It's impossible to have the original version. Then he's altered it beyond belief, and this is one reason why people like want to make time-stamped copies to even prevent the artist from messing with it. So like this is another reason, and it kind of goes on. And also, you know, in a pandemic, you can't experience work. And anyway, I won't go too much into it, but like before kind of like we wrap up, the reason like I this topic is controversial is there's many reasons, but one thing about Ethereum that is very, very important to, and the biggest reason why I'm personally not going to invest into Ethereum, at least not right now, is because of the global supercomputer and the massive energy consumption. But I will say the creator of Ethereum is massively aware, and has been wanting to address this for probably since inception or for years. And he probably just didn't think it would be this big and it would end up with all this energy consumption. And there is the reason why so Ethereum came out in 2015. The reason why it's like all the rage now is because Ethereum 2.0 launched in December 2020. It's not fully launched, but once it comes out in like its full, I guess, alpha stage, it's supposed to cut down Ethereum's energy usage by 99%. And the reason is that they're going from one type of problem solving to another. One is called proof of stake and one is called proof of work. And so basically the proof of stake is a much more energy efficient mechanism, again, cutting it down by 99%, whereas the other one is just crazy. And so, but in order to convert their entire system from one to the other, it's going to take a bit of time, and it might take up to a couple of years. But so that is something that they are addressing. So for personally, I'm like, if Ethereum can get rid of this massive energy consumption problem, I'll think about it, is one. But the other thing is, my initial getting into cryptocurrencies is actually, I went to visit this company called LO3 in New York that's trying to use blockchain technology to solve energy inefficiencies by using blockchain to solve inefficiencies in transactions and various problems on the electrical grid. So there are people who want to use blockchain to solve energy problems. And because this is their game, they're probably not using Ethereum, at least not right now. And they're using ways that it is obviously going to be like energy zero or at least carbon negative when they do this. So I don't want people to just turn off because of the energy issue. It is a concern, and I absolutely think Ethereum, everybody thinks there's no way Ethereum can go down this path, including, you know, the founder. So like the people who are into NFTs and cryptocurrencies are people who want to solve big problems in the world. And me as a skeptical person, I'm like, let's see if it's going to happen. But the reason why I'm interested myself is I as a person who doesn't talk a lot about politics online, but I am very vocal about environmentalism, like I do just want, I have to say this because people now know me as this person. So that is my concluding thought.
This has been quite a ride. Obviously, I am new to all of this, and I thank you very much for explaining it to me in a way that I can understand. I've shared some of my thoughts already on my skepticism on this application into the art world. I do think that there's a lot of interesting things that can be done in terms of preserving, digitizing art, use in contracts and art auctions, like all of that good stuff seems really interesting. These people doing performance art where they burn Banksy paintings, like, sure, whatever, like not my thing, not my favorite expression of art, but like that's a thing they're doing, and like I don't begrudge them that as long as they don't go on a rampage burning things, obviously. And I am really encouraged to hear things about like making strides towards better environmentalism and all of that kind of stuff that has been a really big concern to me and like my very limited understanding of cryptocurrencies in the past. So yeah, this is not a world that I have a particular interest in getting into, but I am glad that I know more about it. And I will be trying to follow more in like how this relates to the art world. And especially since like as we're recording this incident with the Banksy painting has just happened, but this episode will be going out in 2 weeks. So it'll be very interesting to see how things progress, both with this story specifically, and also like, will this start a trend of any kind of related NFT art incidents?
Yeah, I'm super interested. And again, like I don't think we've quite done a in the news topic as much as this one. So I really hope in 2 weeks, when this comes out, it's not like 500 million things have happened and Ethereum has imploded. But if it does, it'll be an interesting timestamp of what it was like in early March 2021.
Wow, a timestamp, just like blockchain.
OMG.
Also, as we're wrapping up here, we wanted to tell you about another show on Relay FM that you might enjoy if you like this one, and that is Focused, which is all about the idea of how to stay focused on something, which everyone could use, honestly. I feel a lot of trouble sometimes being able to stay focused on like my work or even my hobbies, even fun stuff like researching stuff for this show, which is for fun. I still sometimes have trouble with it. And that is what this podcast is all about. It's hosted by David Sparks and Mike Schmidt. And they often have guests on to talk about things like how they set goals, working with sort of specific types of focus, like for people with ADHD. There's lots of variety in there, and it is a really fun and useful show.
Yeah, it definitely is useful. I haven't listened to this episode yet, but right now I'm looking at episode 119, Productivity and Meditation, which are both things that I really want to do better and actually probably just learn how to do in the first place. So I'm definitely going to give this one a listen myself.
If you want to check it out, that's at relay.fm/focused, or just search for Focused anywhere you get your podcast. Give it a try. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pictorial. You can find our show notes and more information about everything we talked about today at relay.fm/pictorial. You can also find us on Twitter or Instagram at PictorialPod. You can send us any more information you may know about this topic or any feedback. And you can find me on Instagram at AspiringRobotFM.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ArticulationsV, and I am also on YouTube as Articulations. And speaking of YouTube, we also upload these episodes to YouTube under Pictorial Podcasts. There probably won't be too many images this time, except for maybe pictures of like Nyan Cat or Banksy, but I do hope you watch.
Thanks for listening, art enthusiasts.